The major issue at the moment affecting all savers and investors is one of confidence. They don't actually know what's going to be happening over the next few years. We've been told about Brexit. We've got all these issues that have changed in a rather surprising way over the past year, from a rather unusual president-elect in the United States to the changes of government over here. People are worried. Never has there been a time when they are going to rely upon us in this industry for our honesty and integrity to be able to make sure that they know that they made the right decision putting their funds, their investments, their savings with us. It's all about confidence.
Well, I think for the next 12 months or so, we'll be sort of getting used to the idea that interest rates are going to start to rise, at least in the US, much less so in the UK and the Eurozone. And we'll also be weighing the consequences, not just of Brexit, which is still up in the air, but just as important, even for UK investors, will be what happens to the US economy, what President Trump really means for markets and for US growth.
The lifetime saving and pensions market's undergone some really radical reforms in the last few years. What we can do as the regulator is obviously make sure that the rules are fit for purpose around how the market works, but we can also look in depth at whether the markets are working well and whether competition is really delivering for consumers. We've just published our interim study on the asset management market, and what we find within there is that overall there are areas of the market where there is weak price competition. What we're trying to do through the remedies that we're suggesting is introduce much greater transparency, to have a clearer duty on asset managers to act in the interests of their consumers, and to make sure overall that the market delivers some better outcomes for consumers.
Whose responsibility is it? I think government really has to set a lead. The industry can do its bit, and certainly in trying to encourage greater auto-enrolment contributions, arguing for policy to move in that direction, industry's involved. I think the danger for those of us in industry is that it can appear a little self-interested, even if that's not the reality of saying we need more savings, because in the end those savings are going to go into the industry's products. That's why I take the view that government really needs to take this issue by the bull by the horns and really develop a strategy for long-term saving.
TISA has conducted a piece of research really looking at housing wealth and the way in which that might play a role in people's retirement income going forwards. And the reason we think it's going to play a role is there's about 11 million people who are going to be going into retirement in the next 0 to 14 years, and 2/3 of those people haven't done enough in terms of saving for their pensions.
And I think for a lot of younger people, what is trendy, what is in fashion, is also quite an important thing. What are my friends using? It's not what does my bank tell me I should be doing, it's what are my friends doing, and that has a great draw for younger people.
There was the Financial Advice Market Review last year, which obviously is looking to provide digital as a way to step into that advice gap, whether it's supporting robo-advisors or altering the rules around advice, just trying to support that, obviously, because this is an area where there's many people now controlling pots of money through liberalised annuities, etc., who can't necessarily afford advice. So again, current theme throughout the last few years, the government using digital to try and provide solutions to where the market has perhaps failed before. I think there's obviously still a role for education, will continue to be so. And obviously saving more broadly can be helped by nudges and other behavioural economic principles which can be applied in certain apps and saving apps. So I think the digitals have got a role to play, and hopefully will continue to do so.
Well, I think there's a tendency for investors to see political risk as always bad and outsider figures, non-mainstream parties, as being a bad thing. Well, they're certainly a shocking thing, but if you look at what they're responding to, it's a sort of a long-standing failure to deliver from the economy for a large chunk of people. Well, that's something we should all want to fix. So I don't think we should be so scared of populism. We should start to embrace it a little bit.
Sadly, most governments manage to tinker with the issue and very rarely ever help us solve the issue. I'm afraid a lot of it is down to petty politics and trying to win local votes, rather than fully understanding the long-term problem we face with the serious lack of financial education, the lack of understanding of what's really necessary, and logically linked together investment and savings products lasting people's entire lifetime and beyond.